Okay, let's stop pretending things are fine. You feel it. I feel it. Something massive is coming. And people in the know, they're already preparing. Groceries up 23% since 2020. Rent up 18% just this year. Over 1 million job cuts in 2025 so far, more than all of 2024. And now, 42 million Americans could lose SNAP benefits if the shutdown drags on. But here's the kicker. The people with the most to lose, the ultra-wealthy, the governments, the megacorps, they're not waiting. They're building bunkers, stockpiling resources, and stress-testing the systems they plan to replace yours with. They know what's coming. The question is, do you? Let's break down exactly what's happening and why the quietest people you know are suddenly preparing like it's already started. Emergency rooms are quietly collapsing. Look, most people still think that if something really bad happens, whether it's an injury, an outbreak, or a blackout, they'll just head to the nearest ER and get help. That illusion? It's cracking wide open. Right now, emergency departments across the country are not just overwhelmed, they're breaking down. Since 2020, over 160 rural hospitals have reduced or eliminated emergency services in the U.S. And according to the Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform, nearly 30% of all rural hospitals are at risk of closing. That's nearly 600 facilities. And it's not just rural anymore. In Chicago, Los Angeles, and Houston, ER wait times in 2025 have hit record-breaking highs. Patients are waiting 12 to 18 hours just to be seen. And it's not because there's suddenly more injuries or illnesses. It's because we're running out of nurses, paramedics, and critical supplies. The Association of American Medical Colleges has warned of a 124,000 physician shortfall by 2034, but insiders say that's a conservative estimate. This isn't a slow-motion collapse, it's a silent one, because the media won't cover the systemic unraveling of our frontline emergency care system until it becomes a lawsuit. What does that mean for you? It means if you cut your hand or need stitches during a blackout or a grid-down event, you might not get help for a full day. If you go into anaphylactic shock, you better hope someone in your household knows how to use an EpiPen, if you can even find one. Smart families are now learning basic trauma care, stocking antibiotics, and building home first aid capabilities that rival what your local urgent care can provide. Because in the new normal, your living room might be the ER. The rise of food theft and the black market that no one talks about. Now, I want to say this carefully but plainly, because it's not something most people are ready to hear. Food theft is spiking, and a shadow economy is forming around it. In 2025 alone, retail shrinkage from theft in U.S. grocery stores has reached $119 billion, according to the National Retail Federation, up from just $94 billion in 2021. But here's what's getting buried in the reporting. This isn't people stealing TVs or cosmetics. No, it's protein, it's baby formula, it's cooking oil, cheese, canned tuna, and fresh produce. And what's scarier? These aren't desperate individuals. These are organized, coordinated rings, setting up black market food swaps on encrypted apps, local flea markets, and online message boards. This is real. I've spoken to viewers who run grocery chains in the Midwest who say staff now remove formula and meat from the shelves entirely, keeping it locked in the back. In New York, several stores have stopped carrying basic dairy products altogether, not because they can't restock them, but because theft losses have made it financially suicidal. And don't even get me started on farmers markets. They used to be havens of community resilience. Now, some are being infiltrated by resellers who offload stolen or repurposed stock from broken supply chains. So why should this matter to you? Because the line between accessible food and off-grid scarcity is disappearing. And in the event of an economic shock or a cyber disruption, the official distribution networks will lock up instantly. People who've already been priced out are quietly building food networks, growing produce in basements with LED lights, bartering eggs and honey, and stacking dry goods in 5-gallon buckets. They're not hoarding, they're insulating. And if you think the supply chain is going to fix itself after the election, or once inflation cools, you're going to be weeks behind when the shelves go dark. 8. Statewide grid failures are already being simulated because they know what's coming. Here's a sentence that should make your blood run cold. The government is staging war games for your power grid, and you're not invited. In the spring of 2025, multiple states, including Texas, California, and North Carolina, quietly ran full-scale grid failure simulations involving military coordination, private utility companies, and FEMA assets. These weren't tabletop exercises. These were turn the power off and watch what happens drills. And guess what happened? In less than 6 hours, over 70% of all mobile networks failed, and local emergency services were overwhelmed by calls they couldn't respond to. But here's the kicker. They didn't publicize these drills until after they ended. Why? Because they exposed the dirty secret of our infrastructure. It's already one cyber attack, solar flare, or AI misfire away from collapse. In June 2025, a major transformer manufacturing facility in Germany, one of only 5 in the world capable of making high-capacity grid units, caught fire and halted production. These transformers take 2 to 3 years to build. So if even a single substation goes down in your region, it might be months before it's back online. That's not theory, that's your new risk profile. And yet, when you talk to power companies, they'll smile and point to their resiliency programs, while behind closed doors, they're increasing diesel generator orders, purchasing EMP-shielded containers, and stockpiling transformers in hardened facilities. They know. And the quiet prepper? They're not waiting for the next polar vortex or heat dome to be the excuse. They're hardwiring inverters, testing solar backups, and learning how to live with zero external power for 72 hours or longer. Because it's not a matter of if anymore, it's when. And every time the lights flicker, you should be asking, is this it? Because they are. 911 is breaking, and dispatchers are already warning their families first. You've been told your whole life that help is one call away. Just dial 911, right? But what if I told you that in over 30 major cities, the system is already falling apart, and insiders know it? In 2025 alone, the average wait time to reach a 911 dispatcher in some metro areas has climbed to 6 minutes or more, and that's just to get someone on the phone. In Denver, one woman waited 38 minutes for police to respond to a violent intruder call in broad daylight. In Oakland, response times to violent crimes now average 20-plus minutes, if they come at all. But the scary part? It's not just crime. It's medical and fire emergencies, too. Over 1 in 5 fire departments nationwide are now brownout status on any given day, meaning they don't have the manpower or functioning equipment to respond. Paramedics are quitting in record numbers, citing trauma, low pay, and burnout. According to the National Emergency Number Association, over 6,000 dispatcher positions remain unfilled nationwide, many abandoned by experienced workers who say, it's not safe anymore, even behind the desk. And behind the scenes? I've talked to people in the system. They're already telling their families not to rely on it. Quietly, carefully. But it's happening. And the result? Homeowners are forming informal neighborhood patrols, creating off-grid radio backup, and investing in medical trauma kits and fire extinguishers rated for structure-level threats. Because they know, if the call doesn't go through, or help doesn't come, you better have a plan that doesn't include waiting. This is the new reality. And the people who are preparing? They aren't crazy. They're just one step ahead of the crowd that's still putting faith in a system that's already stopped answering the phone. Food insurance for the rich, while the poor wait in line. Let me tell you something that should jolt you out of your seat. There are subscription services, members-only food co-ops, and even offshore bunkers where the wealthy now pay to have food quietly shipped in during a crisis, before anyone else gets a chance. Yes, food insurance is real. It's not called that, but it's exactly what it is. In 2025, elite-level survival, concierge firms, like Fortitude Ranch and Raven Rock, have seen a 72% spike in memberships, according to internal sources. They don't just offer bunkers, they offer priority supply chain access. That means if there's a run on grains, protein powder, or bottled water, these firms already have trucks loaded and contracts in place, ready to bypass the bottlenecks. Meanwhile, back in the real world, we've got school cafeterias running out of milk cartons by Tuesday. We've got food banks in Arizona turning people away by noon. We've got mobile EBT payment failures during outages that leave single moms standing at checkout with carts full of food they can't pay for. And it's not just distribution. The actual production is buckling. Droughts across the Midwest, flooding in the Delta, and pest infestations that wiped out 30% of Washington's apple crop this year alone. All while the price of wheat surged 18%, and global rice stockpiles hit a 20-year low after India's export ban. So what are people doing? The wise ones? The quiet ones? They're filling deep pantries, buying manual grain mills, storing dry goods in Mylar bags, and installing climate-controlled food storage in basements and garages. You want to beat the system? You have to stop depending on it, because when the next supply disruption hits, priority doesn't go to need, it goes to money and contracts. And if you're not one of the rich with a subscription to skip the line, you better be the one who planned not to be in it. America's quiet water emergency. Here's the one that hits different, because it's invisible until it isn't. Water. Not bottled water, not filtered tap, clean, pressurized, drinkable water coming out of your faucet. That luxury? It's already under siege. You probably don't know this, but in Jackson, Mississippi, Toledo, Ohio, and parts of Arizona, residents have already gone days or weeks without safe tap water in the last 18 months. And in 2025, it's getting worse. According to a new EPA audit, over 1 in 4 water utilities in the U.S. are at high risk of operational failure due to aging infrastructure, contamination, cyber vulnerabilities, or drought. This year, a record 124 water systems have issued boil notices for contaminants like E. coli, lead, PFAS, and microplastics. And it's not isolated to rural towns. Houston, Baltimore, and even parts of Los Angeles are reporting brownouts and water pressure, quiet tests for rationing. And here's the kicker. Some cities are now considering surge pricing for water use, mimicking what energy companies do during heat waves. What does that mean? You want to take a shower in a blackout? Better hope it's not 6 p.m., or you'll be paying double, or not getting any at all. Quiet preppers already know what's up. They're installing rain catchment systems, gravity-fed filters, 5-gallon stackable cubes, and off-grid well pumps. They're storing bleach and learning how to dose for purification. They're practicing silent water storage, because in a true emergency, your clean water might make you a target. This is the kind of prep most people ignore until their kids are dehydrated and the tap runs dry. Don't be that person, because when the water stops, civilization follows. And the clock? It's already ticking. Massive banking freeze drills. This one's going to make your stomach turn. Because the truth is, while most Americans are scrolling through news about student loan forgiveness and bank earnings reports, central banks have already begun simulating the shutdown of your access to money. You heard that right. In April 2025, the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, ran a multinational banking simulation code-named Project Polaris, a joint drill between the U.S. Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the Bank of Japan. What were they practicing? Coordinated account freezes during a systemic cyber attack. But here's what they didn't say publicly. The freeze windows lasted up to 7 days, with only pre-approved transactions allowed through, including specific emergency ration disbursements in central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Now pause, think about that. You have cash in the bank. And one morning, you wake up, try to buy groceries, and see a blank screen, or a note saying, "Transaction not approved. Please contact your institution." We've already seen dress rehearsals of this in Nigeria, Lebanon, and Argentina, where ATM lines stretched for hours, cash withdrawals were capped at $20, and banks deployed armed guards to control angry customers. It's not theoretical anymore. Here in the U.S., Chase, Wells Fargo, and Citi have all quietly updated their terms to allow temporary transaction restrictions in the event of extraordinary circumstances, including market volatility or infrastructure failures. Translation? If panic hits, you might not get your money at all. What are the quiet preppers doing? They're not stuffing mattresses. They're spreading risk, storing cash at home, holding silver and gold bullion, diversifying across regional banks, and keeping offline ledgers of what they own. Because when your balance becomes a number someone else can freeze or delete, you better have a plan B. The silent exodus. Why 1.6 million Americans quietly moved off-grid in the last 18 months. Something wild is happening and almost no one is talking about it. According to the latest report from the U.S. Census Bureau and utility providers, over 1.6 million Americans have moved into areas that are classified as non-grid monitored since early 2024. These aren't just RV nomads or weekend preppers. These are families, retirees, engineers, nurses, military vets, people who are not checking out of society, but quietly repositioning themselves outside the blast radius of whatever is coming next. And what's crazy is how quietly this is all happening. Zoning boards in Idaho, Montana, West Virginia, and northern Arizona report a surge in applications for composting toilets, solar panel permits, well drilling, and unincorporated land development. Companies like EcoFlow, Bluetti, and Titan Solar report inventory shortages for portable solar batteries and off-grid inverters. Why? Because the smart ones are building autonomous homes that don't depend on centralized utilities. They're watching the same headlines you are, but taking action. The grid instability, the food inflation, the rising civil unrest, the housing crises in cities. And they've decided that waiting for help is no longer a strategy. They're planting food, installing satellite mesh networks, building cellars, and forming tight-knit, high-trust local alliances. They don't advertise it. You won't find it on Instagram. But if you know where to look, you'll see the signs. They've quietly exited the rat race and are now preparing for the long game. Not the bug-out fantasy, but true resilience. Because they understand one thing most city dwellers don't. You don't build lifeboats after the ship starts taking on water. You build them while the music is still playing. And right now, the band is still playing, but the exits are already crowded. Uninsurable zones are spreading. I need you to understand this one deeply, because it's already happening, and by the time it hits your zip code, it'll be too late to fix. We are entering an era where millions of homes in the U.S. are becoming uninsurable. Meaning what? Meaning, if your house burns down in a wildfire, gets swallowed by a flood, or shaken by a quake, you're out. No payout, no rebuild, no nothing. Why? Because major insurers are pulling out. State Farm, Allstate, Farmers, and Nationwide have all stopped writing new policies in large parts of California, Florida, Louisiana, and even parts of Texas and Colorado. And it's spreading fast. These companies are citing unpredictable climate patterns, systemic risk, and infrastructure degradation as reasons. In plain English, they know what's coming and they're getting out first. In 2024 alone, climate-related insurance losses topped $165 billion globally, with $88 billion of that in the United States. And those losses are no longer just hurricanes and wildfires. They're storm surges in New Jersey, heat-wave-induced blackouts in Oregon, and hailstorms destroying rooftops in Denver. So what happens when a neighborhood can't get insured? Real estate collapses, mortgages dry up, people walk away. And now? You're sitting on a ticking liability. The quietly prepared are already moving their assets. They're investing in hardened homes, upgrading roofs with metal, installing fire barriers, adding flood diverters, and keeping copies of their insurance policies in waterproof safes, just in case claims start being denied outright. They're also mapping evacuation routes, rehearsing load-and-go drills, and storing digital copies of deeds and documents on offline drives. Because they understand the hard truth. If insurers won't cover you, no one else will either. Not FEMA, not the bank, not your governor. You're on your own. So the only real insurance left is preparedness. The normalcy clock is ticking, and global elites are preparing for controlled collapse. Let me say this as clearly as I can. What's coming is not just a disruption. It's a managed decline, a controlled demolition of the old systems we once depended on: finance, food, governance, information, and the rollout of something entirely new. And here's the terrifying part. If you're waiting for an announcement, you'll already be too late. The signs are everywhere. In July 2025, the World Economic Forum quietly updated its Resilient Futures initiative to include language around post-market systems of access, meaning a world where you don't own, you don't buy, you simply access what you're permitted to. Global banks are rapidly piloting central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, that allow for real-time tracking, purchase restrictions, and even geo-fenced spending. In plain English, your money could stop working outside of your assigned zone or expire if you don't spend it in time. And while most people laugh that off, it's already live in China, Brazil, and Nigeria. The US pilot, FedNow, launched last year. They're calling it a settlement rail. But behind closed doors, it's the skeleton key for programmable currency. And what else? Governments are hoarding grain, centralizing farmland, and fast-tracking synthetic food production. The UK has stockpiled 10 years of antibiotics for a future event. Germany reactivated Cold War bunkers. The US military just awarded a $1.4 billion contract for domestic tactical energy security systems. Think about that. While they say everything is fine, they're quietly moving infrastructure underground, mapping population behavior, and digitizing identity systems. Why? Because the old model of civilization, growth, freedom, decentralization, is no longer profitable for those at the top. They want control, not chaos. And the only way to manage a system-wide failure is to pre-stage the replacement and collapse the rest, slowly and silently. What do the quietly prepared know? They've stopped asking, when will it go back to normal? They know it won't. They're building lives that don't rely on normal. They're trading in cash, learning trades, bartering locally, building skill-based communities, and living as if they'll wake up one day and the world will be unfamiliar. Because they understand the game. This isn't about one blackout, one storm, or one shortage. This is a timeline shift. From abundance to control, from access to rationing, from freedom to filters, permissions, algorithms, and surveillance. And the hardest truth? No. One is coming to save you. Not the Fed, not the next election, not the headlines, not the corporations. That's why quiet preparation isn't a hobby anymore. It's the new survival instinct. So ask yourself right now, if the system you rely on collapsed tomorrow, your bank, your power, your phone, your job, what would you do in the first 24 hours? What would your family eat? How would you stay warm? Where would you go? Because the countdown is over. The sirens won't sound. The lights will just go out. And those who prepared will just keep going. So now you know. The systems are cracking. The warnings aren't subtle anymore. From failing 911 calls to empty shelves, frozen bank accounts to uninsurable homes, this isn't doom and gloom. This is what's actually happening. But the people who are quietly preparing, they're not panicking. They're just done depending on fragile systems. They're building backups. They're buying time. They're staying calm while the rest of the world scrolls past the danger. So here's the real question. Are you ready to be one of them? Because normal isn't coming back. And when the lights go out, when the networks freeze, when help doesn't show up, you won't have time to wonder, what if? You'll only have what you've already done. If this spoke to you, don't wait. Start with food. Start with water. Start with a backup for your power, your cash, your medicine. Build just one layer of resilience this week, and then build another. We're not here to be afraid. We're here to be ready. So stay steady, stay alert, and as always, prepare, like your future depends on it. Because it does. I'll see you in the next one.